Hello, everyone. I am Ken Goldberg, professor at UC Berkeley, and my Twitter handle is here at the bottom at Ken_Goldberg. And I'm happy to be joined by Yahav Avigal, a PhD student at UC Berkeley, who's the lead on this project with me, and also Sebastian Ohm from Technical University of Munich, who is also contributing to the project. So our topic is how robots can be useful for agriculture. And in particular, we're going to talk about a very new project that we're developing that we're very excited about. So the idea here, this is a shot of my lab. And this is from a recent children's book, which we can make available to you if you get in touch with me. This is actually the students who are in the lab and some of the sponsors that make our work possible. And I have to say, a huge amount of credit goes out to the amazing students that I work with at Berkeley. So the issue is, how do we improve agriculture? And it's a topic that I think is familiar to many of you. It's something we all benefit from, obviously. And it is a challenge to keep up with agriculture in today's climate, especially when there is so much shifting in terms of climate change. So a number of applications where robots are coming in. This is a system from Blue River that's being used to automatically monitor and remove weeds in a field using computer vision and a robotic injector system. There are systems that are being developed to do tasks such as picking strawberries and other kinds of vegetables. This is an ongoing and very active and increasingly active area. Robots are also being used in terms of spraying for fertilizers and nutrients in the soil. And in an earlier project that I'll just touch on briefly, we studied the challenge of delivering precision irrigation. And what we want to do there is to save water and, as a result, be able to adjust the amount of water at the individual plant level, to tune the amount of water, because the conditions in the field vary at each plant. So the idea was to use these adjustable emitters that are basically just a plastic screw. Very inexpensive. They cost a few pennies. And the idea is, how do we adjust the screw once we have a model of the field? So there might be thousands or tens of thousands of these little caps out there. So we developed a system that we call DATE, for automatic tuning of emitters. And this is a prototype. Again, it's not the commercial product, but the idea is that a worker in the field, agriculture worker, could walk around and make adjustments to these small emitters without having to keep track of anything. And so this whole device is connected by using GPS and a local system that can basically determine when an emitter needs adjustment. It will notify the worker and guide the worker down to the specific emitter that needs adjustment. And then by placing this over the emitter, the system will, let me see, I have a video here. The system will then make the appropriate adjustments. So you just hold this in your hand. Again, it's very bulky, but then it can zoom in and make the adjustment on the emitter line. And so here's the design of the system to be self-aligning. We did tests on this and showed that it worked for a fairly reasonable range of positions and orientations around the emitter. And it was funded by a USDA grant. And we're also happy to say that this was the design of the system was patented in January 2019, and it is. And I'm going to give you a short video on the project here. Actually, I'm going to skip this in the interest of time. Now, we've been looking at gardens for quite a long time. In fact, in 1995, 25 years ago, my students and I developed a system that we called the Telegarden. And the Telegarden was an industrial robot arm that we positioned at the center of a real living garden. And we made this available online so that anyone on the internet, and this was the early days of the internet, when the internet, if you recall, was first made available in 1994, 93, 94. So this was very early, and the system looked like this. It was available 24 hours a day. That's why it had lights, and it could pick up seeds. It could plant them at different locations determined by participants online. And then once it planted a seed, it would then irrigate. So the system was essentially designed to be completely teleoperated and to allow many people to use it over the internet. And in fact, it was surprisingly popular. It was used by thousands, then tens of thousands. And in the end, approximately 100,000 people helped participate in the garden. So 25 years later to this year, we developed a new system that is asking exploring a different question. And we call this the AlphaGarden. And the question here is could such a robot system completely autonomously take care of a garden? And if the garden is very, very controlled, that's not such a difficult problem. It's just a matter of routine, repetitive watering, etc. But it gets much more interesting if the garden is a polyculture garden. So the AlphaGarden is considering the following scenario. So in traditional gardening, we have monoculture, where everything is the same and nicely separated. So that's the majority of the way agriculture is done today. There's different plant types, and there's a number of benefits to that, which is particularly it's more natural. It's actually the way gardening was done for thousands of years. It also is more resilient to pests and invasive species. It can use far less water to have a polyculture garden. So there's many advantages. The disadvantage is that a polyculture garden requires quite a bit more labor. It's very labor intensive and challenging to implement. So the question is, could this be automated? And this is an open question. And one of the challenges is that there's so much complexity to the polyculture environment. So Yahav and the team, we've been working on this for approximately a year now. And the AlphaGarden we can formulate this as an optimization problem. What we're trying to do is optimize a reward function, which is a combination of the coverage, the diversity, that is the mix of plant types, and sustainability, which is the efficiency of the garden in terms of water usage. Now, for the hardware part, we're using a commercially available system called the FarmBot. And this is a very elegant design that is available online. It's approximately $3,000 US. And as you can see, the system is a gantry type robot. It can move in X, Y, and Z directions with a set of stepper motors. And it allows coverage of an area that is approximately 3 meters by 1.5 meters. So we purchased one of these and installed it in our greenhouse. And here's a quick look at the system. So we then decided how we would develop the control system around this. So a number of people have been looking at problems related to automated gardening for many years. So there's an entire literature and research field around this. And for our problem, however, though, we were not able to find very much work in automating polyculture farms. So we realized that the time constants for farming are very, very large. So in contrast to a lot of control problems, such as inverted pendulum or robot grasping, here things happen on the order of days or even weeks. So to collect data on the system, we developed a simulator. And this is the model of the simulator here you're seeing the garden at day 15, and below it, the simulated version of the garden. And you see next to it, the garden at day 30 with the associated simulation. So the simulation is not meant to be perfect. Every plant is represented as just a two-dimensional disk. But the idea is that we can get some idea of how the plants will interrelate and grow over time. So here is a video. There we go. Wait, let me go back. I'm going to show you a video of the simulation in action. The nice thing about the simulation is that we can run it far faster than a physical garden. So a simulation can be run at 10,000 times the speed of nature. And what you're seeing here, the red squares are pruning events. That's where we go in and prune the garden in simulation. But here you're seeing 64 gardens, each with slightly different parameters and the resulting growth. So this is a very effective way for us to build a model of how gardens grow and how we can tune the parameters of let's say the pruning policy and the watering policy to achieve the objective, the reward that I mentioned earlier. This is an outcome of one of the physical garden that we had growing in the spring, and I'll say more about that later. Here's a time lapse that we recorded by taking an image of the garden every evening at 9 p.m. And this is over a 3-month period. So you can see the growth pattern. What we see is that after a slow start period, the garden in this case is very dense, and as you can see, polyculture, because you can see the different species and varieties of plants. These are all edible plants, and this is herb garden essentially. So you see things like bok choy and dill and nasturtiums in there. And here it is at approximately 2 months in, and you can see the competition is extremely fierce. The garden is certain plants are really taking over and others are dying. There's some basil, and you'll watch this evolve. And then at this point, the garden starts to become enter a final phase. And at this point, COVID-19 forced us out of the greenhouse. We're not able to go in and irrigate. And so the garden now enters a death phase where it starts to desperately put out these flowers in an attempt to get attention. And this is not anticipated, but you can see the stage of the garden at this point as it deteriorates into its final stage. And it's basically, we had to watch it from a distance essentially die. All right, so now we're working on the next generation of the garden, and we're doing versions of design for this system, again, using this reward function. And the model, I want to say a few words about the simulator, which is that it takes into account a number of variables in a simulation garden. So there's a distribution of plant types, typically about 10, as you see here on the lower left. These are the edible plants: basil, bok choy, nasturtium, mint, etc. Each of them have their own parameters. There is a mix here as shown about the difference between the soil and the amount of canopy, which is the leaf coverage over the soil, which we track over time. And then the diversity is measured in terms of distribution of different plant the amount of leaf coverage from each type of plant. So what we want is something like you see on the left here, high entropy, where you have basically a balanced distribution of plant types. And then the last element here is the sustainability, which is related to the irrigation. So we have an indicator variable here that indicates if we water, basically a burst of water at a particular location, how the garden will respond. So we can model this with Richard's equation for soil water absorption, and we can monitor single plant growth and multi-plant growth. This is where we have plants interacting. This turns out to be extremely difficult to model, and there's relatively little interaction. literal literature on this topic. So this has been a study of a paper, and we've been developing the tool to basically, there's an analytic control system, an analytic policy that will water the plants. We're also developing an automatic pruning system, as you can see here on the left. And the action space is to be able to do experiments. So we're running a little low on time, but I can just show you that, for example, in this simulation, we can see how the coverage and the diversity vary over the course of the life cycle of the garden. And here we can have a fixed automation policy that changes those parameters. And the analytic policy that we were able to tune achieves fairly high diversity and nice coverage over the course of the life cycle. Again, it peaks out at about 50 days. We monitor things like the water usage, et cetera. And basically, we found that the analytic policy was able to, there's a trade-offs between different choices of policy, between whether we prune or not, et cetera. So in terms of diversity, it was optimized with the analytic policy we have here. And we've run this with different kinds of scenarios, different amounts of invasive species. And there's a video here, which I'll show during Q&A. But I wanted to also mention that the project has been included in an art installation in New York City at the New School, Parsons. And it's really raising the question about what is intelligence, and is a robot system capable of addressing this very biological and very natural problem. This is a photo that was just taken yesterday of the new generation of the garden. So we're now entering a new growth phase. And here we're controlling very carefully for the amount of the arrangement of the plants. So this is actually a symmetric, both left and right halves of these gardens are essentially identical. And as you can see, they were planted very similarly, but they're not growing similarly. So this is one of the variables and the variations that we're trying to study in terms of making a policy that's robust. Okay, so that is what I have for you. I'm going to go back to the video, which I'll let run in the background. I'll just mention that we're looking at many different aspects of this, and there's quite a bit of research ongoing, and we'll be doing over the next couple of years. So there's many opportunities for future work here in continuing to refine and to address this question, including topics like trying to do plant phenotyping, being able to identify the leaf type automatically, and then track and prune accordingly. We're looking at algorithms policies that look beyond a single step into multi-step policies that look into the future. And there's many other questions that we can consider. So happy to be interrupted if you have questions. We only have a few more minutes, but I'm going to let this run and I can go on and talk. Maybe Yahab, Sebastian, do you guys want to add something that I missed?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that we also submitted a paper to CASE.
Oh, yes. Sure. Thank you. Sorry, I missed that. The paper we submitted a paper to CASE that won the Best Student Paper Award. And this has been published. And I should mention also that the project is available online. If you want to see this video and other information about the garden, it's available at AlphaGarden, one word, .org, O-R-G. And Yahab, do we have the paper posted there?
I think we do.
Okay. If we don't, we will post it there. And you can get in touch with us very easily. I'm Goldberg at berkeley.edu. That's Goldberg at Berkeley, BERKELEY.edu. So this is the video of the display that we had in the New York exhibition that is essentially showing how the system should work, where it can automatically identify different plant types and then move in to individual sectors and make decisions based on those analysis of whether to prune or water in each sector. And so you see at the bottom that is tracking the coverage and the plant diversity. And this is another video. This is a video I showed earlier about the simulator, showing just one example simulation here with the pruning events. And then you'll see it back off to show you multiple gardens running in parallel. Okay, good. Some questions from Raul. How do you view this venture in the future? What about the next generations? And how do you address the social economic issues that arise regarding the farmers and their livelihood? Excellent. Okay, good. I'll answer both those. And again, you'll have Sebastian, happy to have you jump in if you would like to respond as well. We see this as an ongoing experiment and a very interesting challenge for robotics, because robots, here we have a very, very uncertain dynamics. It's very difficult to predict the next state, and it's not very repeatable. So in other words, given the same exact garden conditions and the same set of actions, the final result of the garden might be very different. So this is, to us, is a very nice example of a class of problems that arise in robotics, where it's important to build a robust system that is robust to errors and uncertainties in both perception and control, and importantly, in the underlying physics. So there, as you say, generations, each generation of the garden is approximately 3-4 months, and we're entering the second generation after making a number of improvements. We have a much better irrigation model. We actually added irrigation sensors. We have a much better camera. We've now very carefully controlled the placement of the seeds. So each iteration of the garden will change a number of factors and then observe and record the results. So we're now working on a paper for the second paper on the project. And in terms of the social economic issues, this is extremely important, and I appreciate that question. Our goal is not to replace human workers. We are not interested in that objective, which I understand that many are afraid of. But our sense is that human workers can be supported by robots like this. So in a small area, remember that this garden is not practical to generate a huge amount of food, but it could be useful in a small area, for example, to support maybe a small family that would be able to have such a system. And I think everyone on the team would agree that this system could not run fully autonomously. So it would still require a fair amount of human interaction. And so we're not close to replacing humans, but the idea is, could this support humans by very carefully tending the garden to produce more food? And in this aspect, we see there is potential to make more diverse food available for populations, that for local, being able to grow local fresh produce. There's a potential there. And there's also, in many areas of the world, the challenge is water. As you're probably aware, in India, and we've had a major drought in California for several years. That was actually when we started this project, was motivated by that drought. So one of our strong goals here is to optimize the amount of water that's used, again, at the per plant level, tuning the amount of water so we don't overwater the garden. Okay, is there a season or time when you plant these? As everything is done in a controlled environment, does this matter? Oh, that's a good question too. In fact, it does matter, and it's because we're doing this in a greenhouse. We can control the lighting to a large degree with overhead lights, but the ambient lighting in the greenhouse is also important. And plants have a very strong biological clock. They respond to the amount of light, which indicates how their growth pattern. And so there are plants that thrive in summer and other plants that thrive in the winter. So we have to take that into account. And when we choose the plants that we're going to plant in the garden, So we work with several biologists, plant biologists here at Berkeley who advise us on these kind of factors. So the season or time is important. And again, I think it's a great question in terms of the robustness of the garden and of the control system. Yahav, you want to add to that?
No, that was perfect.
Okay. So there is a team. I don't have a slide for everyone, but Yahav and Sebastian are representing them. But we have a team of about, the original team was about 15 people, and now we have 10 ongoing in the lab who are contributing in various ways to the project. And we are excited about the next phase, and we hope to be able to present those results of the next season of the garden at Techfest. So let's see, if there isn't another question, what I'll do is I'm going to go back to a video that I had earlier. And in fact, I need to reshare my screen. So let me stop the share for a second, and I'll come back to it in a second here. Okay. If we have another minute or so, I can show this video if you'd like to. I'm going to share the sound and optimize for this video, okay? Okay, share and play. Okay, hopefully, let me know if you can hear this.
Water shortages and droughts are increasingly common in California and worldwide. Currently, 85% of fresh water is used for agriculture, and much of that is lost by overwatering. Our goal is to conserve water with precision irrigation at the plant level. Recent advances in infrared sensing and UAVs now make it possible to monitor conditions from the air to identify plants that are receiving too much or too little water. A key challenge is how to close the loop, adjusting the flow of water at the plant level in response to this data. One approach is to use electronic valves. However, these are prohibitively expensive and prone to failures. A new research project funded by USDA grant will explore an alternative: rapid, robot-assisted precision irrigation delivery, where portable devices will adjust low-cost passive valves that cost far less than electronic valves. The rapid system will employ the innate skills of human workers for locomotion and dexterity. GPS and RFID wireless technology will identify which valves to adjust and by what amount, based on data and weather predictions, to direct human workers to which valves need adjustment. The project will design, prototype, and evaluate the rapid system and investigate how mobile robots can be included to facilitate valve adjustment.
Okay, so I wanted to share that video with you. And I saw the other question about the indoors and outdoors. I appreciate that, Raul, because it is actually a crucial question, and there we go. It is a crucial question. The challenge in outdoor environments, as you know, is that the nature becomes even more unpredictable. Now we have insects and pollinators and a variety of other effects. You have variations, uncontrolled variations in climate conditions, humidity, and precipitation, and the presence of small insects actually radically changes the garden. In fact, it can be argued that we have a big disadvantage indoors because we can't have natural pollinators. So it's a very artificial environment. In a true garden, you add the complexity increases. An outdoor garden will be increased. The complexity will increase dramatically. So it's an excellent point. We're taking steps by putting this in a greenhouse that give us a fairly large measure of consistency and controllability. We want to argue that it's still very, very that the response is very uncertain, and but we want to start there and see if we're able to develop a policy. Then the next step, and it's a very good point, would be to take this garden and put it in an outdoor setting. So we believe, and as your question hints, that this is going to be, that would be extremely relevant to the challenges. And so again, this is why it's a multi-year project. The system will have to continue for multiple years in order to reach a state where it can function reasonably well in an outdoor environment. All right, well, listen, we're out of time, but I appreciate your questions, and I think it's a good time to sign off. Raul, do you want to, anything else you want me to add or anything else to state? We'll be back at the Techfest in whenever it's held. In fact, actually, I have a big question is, when is it going to be? December, January? And we're looking forward to talking more with you then.